All right. Well, if no one else has anything to say, I assume we can move on to our third one, which would be the government itself, actually. This should be quite the interesting discussion, actually. So a couple questions for would be, what is the role of government in society? What does the America of tomorrow look like? What role should government play in help keeping the American dream, I'm not sure what that is, but the American dream in general, I guess, attainable for everybody?
Well, I think first and foremost, the American dream is different than it was before. It's not just having the prettiest wife and a nice shiny car and a house the size of the whole state of Illinois. It's about like having working internet, having either some form of transportation, whether that be a car, whether that be metro transit, some form of working transportation, and it's having either someone that you love or someone that's a good friend, like maybe you and a bunch of roommates, or you and your lesbian girlfriend, or it's not the same as it was before. It's not one size fit all, a mother, a son, and it's different now.
I agree. Like, I think the American dream used to be more about the pursuit of happiness, the idea that any person could set out and do something that they really loved and possibly become successful at it. But like, I think, and I'm going to blame capitalism on this one, that it's been mutated into the acquisition of material wealth. It's all about materialism now. And that people, their pursuit of happiness is getting that bigger house or getting that nicer car. And that I think we need sort of a cultural revolution in the United States to shift away from materialism and focus more on like the arts themselves, or things that giving people a passion and a drive in life, because I think that's going to create more of a lasting pursuit of happiness, not going to work at some job I hate so I can buy a new TV. Like, that's not what the American dream is supposed to be.
I would agree. It's about having a job that you love, and it's not just about work. It's about doing something that makes an impact, and that's about the American dream.
I think this idea of what is the role of government is really central to our political debate today, and I think it's the core cause of a lot of the sort of factionalism and oppositional debate that we see. And I think there's just a fundamental gap in people's perspective. And is government here to make sure that we're all doing as well as we can, that we're all being able to define what is our pursuit of happiness, what is more important to us, and supporting that? Or is it to see that I, as an individual, am benefiting at the greatest level that I can within our society? And I really think that that is the fundamental question. I don't think we've answered it yet. I think we're trying to answer it right now. I think it's created a very oppositional political environment where it's difficult to even have conversations like this. That's why I'm glad we're doing this here tonight. But I do think that that really is a fundamental question. And I think there are parts of us, people question authority. People are concerned about authority. It's very easy to sort of fan the anti-government flame because everyone's a little distrustful of government, and you should be. It's a healthy thing. But I think that it's easy in our political environment today to use that to make it more opposition, to make it harder to answer this question, what is the role of government?
Which would get, and I ask that a lot when I'm, again, talking to the students at the U at Augsburg, is I say, well, what do you want Minnesota to look like in the future? And what do you want government to look like? And what do you want, what's your happiness? And I get back to, well, then you have this choice. You can either choose to vote and make a decision on some specifically the amendments or who you want to represent you, and call them up and ask them, what is your, talk about what is your views on education? What is your view on transit? What is your view on energy? Go and call and ask those people, because then, learn about them, get their impact, and then decide, do you want to go this way, or do you want to go this way, or do you want to go this way? And so what do you want Minnesota to look like? And that gets back to specifically the amendments. They said, again, does this voter restriction amendment, does that lessen the number of people voting, and does that lesser youth voting? And so, do you want that, or do you want to stop that so more people vote? I mean, Minnesota, we lead the nation, and a lot of times in national elections, and we kind of are proud on that everybody goes and votes. And then that you have the marriage amendment. And so again, what do you want what do you view Minnesota to look like in the future? And so that's why it's important that you stand up and vote, and that everybody stands up and vote. So we all have a hand in deciding what do we want Minnesota to look like.
Yeah. I think that the government its job shouldn't be to restrict people, more it should be a vessel for happiness. I mean, the voter ID is about restricting people from voting, and the marriage amendment is about restricting people from getting married to their girlfriend or boyfriend or friend that has no gender. So, yeah, the government shouldn't be out there to just restrict us. I mean, there are certain things that need to be restricted, like you can't murder people just because you don't like them, but it should be more about helping people find their passion.
I mean, in this state especially, we have the Minnesota Miracle, for example. I mean, we've had large pieces of government that have made this state a better place, a smarter place, a richer place, a more fulfilled place. I mean, and this was government playing a role in people's lives, and it was broadly supported at the time. Now we've stepped away from supporting education, from supporting healthcare in the same way, from supporting these things that make us more fulfilled, supporting the arts. And I think we're paying the price, and it's a generational price that we'll pay, and we'll see the sort of deterioration, I guess, of our quality of life here over generations, and it'll take generations to build it, just like it did before.
Yeah, along the lines that you were saying, it's about coalition building. That's the role of government, I believe, to be able to provide the equality of opportunity to individuals to achieve what they want. You don't necessarily have to have solvency for every issue, but the equality of opportunity needs to be there. And I think that's what the role of government is for, not to restrict people, but to allow for people to achieve what they wish.
I guess the question is then, where do you guys think the role of government should end, though? Where do you think, I'm asking, where do you think the government should end? Where has it gone too far?
Government overreach.
It's a tough
I
question.
don't think these amendments were needed. I don't think they belong in the Constitution. I think they are issues that are perfectly capable of being handled as laws. I mean, right now we have a law on the books on, voting, and we have a law on the books of marriage, and I think they're perfectly fine there. I don't think they need to go. I think that was overreach putting them in the Constitution. I don't think they belong in the Constitution, and so that's, one place where I think government needs to end.
I think we need to stop trying to make as many loopholes as we can or snuff out as many loopholes. I think that the law should be treated less like some sort of ant farm and more like a computer program that's supposed to deliver happiness,
In the state of Minnesota and in the city of Minneapolis, we have we have all these wonderful indicators. We have some of the smartest people, the most literate people, the healthiest people, the richest people, the most educated people. But then we have the largest disparities in the country between the majority community and communities of color. It's a difficult question. It's a difficult a nut to crack, and we spend a lot of time in city government trying to figure this out, because a lot of those disparities exist here within the city limits of Minneapolis more than anywhere else in the state. And so this question of what is government's role in creating that equity of opportunity, and I think there is a role, and I mean it translates down into daily work for me. A big project like the old Sears building, Midtown Exchange Global Market, that we were able to set historic high goals for minority participation, women participation, figure out new ways of creating that opportunity that were essentially bookkeeping, but it was really the role of city government to define that. Here's our goals, this is our project. If you want to do this project, if you want to be part of this project, you're going to participate in that. And I think that was a good thing for government to do. I don't think that was overreaching, and so I'm trying to figure out what framework that might have been overreaching, and I don't think it was. I mean, I think we need to acknowledge here there's something inherent in our government, in our corporate culture, and other things that are sustaining these disparities.
And think we also, though, to get to where the end of government is, I mean, I worked at the Hennepin County prior to being elected in the state senate, and we did a lot of work with we collaborated and partnered a lot with the city of Minneapolis, and then also a lot of the nonprofits, because Hennepin County does a lot of health and human services issues, and we realized that we can't do it all, and so we work closely with a bunch of different nonprofits, from United Way to a bunch of different foundations, McKnight Foundations, and so in like North Minneapolis, there was a group that actually got all of the nonprofits and all the foundations together that are in serving a certain population, and figured out, okay, so what's government doing, and what are all the nonprofits doing, and what are all the foundations doing, to make sure that we were attempting to fill those holes, and that everybody wasn't working on this, but we were all missing this. And so there is we do partner, government does partner a lot with the nonprofits and corporations and each other, because we realize there's just not a pool of money laying around out there, and so we do need to be smarter, and we do need to be more effective. And so I believe we do work really good in saying, okay, nonprofit, you're doing best on that, we can help you do here, and then you need to take it from there. And the city of Minneapolis, you do this, and the county, you do this. And so we do, continually talk nonstop on how can we make this work better.
I think we need to get minorities out of the minority status as a country. I mean, 50% of the population is women, yet there's still a wage gap between women, and there's still the media objectifying us, but there are a lot of women. It's like people should just be treated like people, people should all be treated like people, I guess.
And talking about the minorities being at a disadvantage, I think a lot of that, with also talking about the end of the role of government, is talking about what a person can do to their own body, like in the war on drugs. When you create a price ceiling or a prohibition, a price ceiling of 0, that making drugs illegal, suddenly you are creating an illegal market, you're creating more crime, and then the United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world of 743 citizens per 100,000 citizens. And in representative of the people in prison, 50% of federal prisoners are for drug-related use, and a lot of those, a high percentage, I don't remember what it is people of or minority status. And I think ending the war on drugs, not having the government regulate what a person can do with their own body when it doesn't affect someone else. I mean, there definitely has to be laws. You can't go be publicly intoxicated on meth and running around being belligerent, but what someone does in their own home, I think, could be where government needs to get out of people's homes, get out of people's decisions, and I think that will help ending disparities in minority groups as well.
And to your question, when is government going too far? And I identify with a number of communities that are out of the mainstream, and one of them is the Native community. My father's a tribal member, my grandmother's a tribal member. There were state and federal policies to decimate my community, to eliminate my community, to drain population off of the reservations, to quash culture and language. Until 1978, Native people couldn't even worship in their own way. It was against the law. So I would say that's overreach. That's government overreach. When the government itself is saying, you are not a valid person, and we're going to take these steps and pass these laws and institute these programs to make sure that you are not a valid person, and that you know it, and that your children know it, and that your grandchildren know it. I would say that's government overreach.
All right, well, very interesting discussions. I gotta say, I'm quite impressed with the intelligence just radiating, I swear. It's like little waves of intelligence. I feel smarter already being around you people. But let's get on to that last section where we get some Q&A from the studio audience. I think that would be a lovely way to end this. So please wait till you have the mic to speak. But if anyone has any questions for specific people on the panel here, that'd be nice. Or just a question in general. Anybody?
My name is Janet Yanes, and the young lady over here, I really, really love you for saying way too much homework. I think that's a way of making teenagers not even giving them a chance to find out who they are, where they're going, or what they want to be. Because it's homework, homework, homework.
Yeah, I get a lot of homework, and what I've kind of started doing, it's kind of a bad habit, but I've kind of just been neglecting little tiny chunks of homework just to find out who I am. I still don't know what I'm going to do when I'm old, and that's kind of sad. I mean, I'm going to be like old soon. I need to find out what I'm going to do with my life.
I still don't know what I'm going to do with my life. You had time.
I agree with that too, because I mean, this summer, when I didn't have school and didn't have any homework, I mean, part of my goal was I wanted to read and write a little bit every day just so I wouldn't lose some of my like cognitive skills or whatever. And in doing so, I kind of actually did learn a lot about who I am. Like I started journaling things, like my just everyday thoughts, just to see things. And as I discovered as school started, I don't have time to read a Hemingway novel or like write down something or whatever and just like kind of explore. And so I think like school kind of kills imagination in a lot of ways. Yeah. And being overloaded with homework, like that doesn't do anything for anybody but make you someone that society wants to fit into this mold.
And the thing about homework, what I've realized with homework is it's completely useless. Like it's just a bunch of like extra problems. I'm completely serious. Like I could totally do well on a test as long as the teacher is interesting. You don't have to give me all these worksheets for me to ace a test. I just need to be engaged and be interested in what you're talking about.
Along those lines, yeah, there is quite a bit of homework, but I also think that it's a good thing to have homework so you can be able to show the teacher and the teacher to be able to know where you're at in the course. Like I do get a lot of homework because I'm in like CIS microeconomics, which is college in the schools, and I'm also in AP psychology, and that's a minimum of 2 hours of homework a night per class. So it is a lot of homework, but I do it. I do think it's a lot, but I do think there should be some homework so the teacher as well can test or kind of see where you're at in the course.
Well, yeah, but sometimes like there are some homeworks where the teacher just can't tell where you're at because it's just like looking at the worksheet and see if you've done anything. They don't check if you've done them right. I mean, in some things like Spanish, our Spanish teacher actually goes through and reads everything, and sometimes I put little notes on the end of the page, like I'll put como se dice pineapple, and she'll write how to say pineapple in Spanish, and it's like interesting. But other times they're just math worksheets, and I remember this one math teacher I had, and if I put a piece of paper on the table that was just a bunch of random numbers that I wrote, she would give me 100% on my homework. So,
Though I think, homework definitely does have a role, but one thing I've been doing, or we've been doing in my calculus class is it's called like a reverse classroom, where you go at home and you read a chapter and then you come back to school the next day and you do homework problems in class, and then you can talk to your student or your peers, you can ask the teacher questions, and you do your homework in class, and so I guess it's your classwork, but your classwork is then your homework, and it's very helpful in switching what the role of the classroom is for like a more 21st century.
yeah, I know that my brother does that. His like school, he like his teacher like does these videos, and then he takes the lessons home and learns them, and then he goes back to the class and then talks. And I had his same teacher, and what I really liked about that teacher is she like tried to engage us. She didn't like stick to the state standards. She went above and beyond, and I've still been sort of like, she taught us algebra way before we needed, so now I've got this strong math foundation that I can use for so much stuff.
Yeah, along the engaging lines, our teacher, Ms. Madsen at Forest Lake High School, on Fridays poses a philosophical question. So she engages the classroom in relation to those types of engagement questions as well.
All right.
I believe we have a question over there.
Yeah.
Hi, back on to politics. Sorry, I know homework is like what's on your mind all the time. But so earlier, this question is more specifically for the youth. Earlier you were talking about wanting to lower the voting age. But I think adults might have a lot of pushback on that. So what myths would you like to dispel about youth in politics and why it's actually a good idea to have the voting age lowered?
The myth that I would like to dispel is that we will not vote the same as our parents.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, we will probably vote the opposite. We are not just going to be used by our parents. We are going to have actual political thoughts. I mean, we might draw some inspiration from our parents, but we're not just going to copy their ballots.
What age would you suggest?
16.
I think that there really shouldn't be a voting age. I think that's a thing that you should decide for yourself. Like, you should decide when you're ready to vote. Like, I mean, a 6-year-old might not decide that he or she is ready to vote, but it's like, you know when you have political thoughts. You know it. I think it's sort of you.
Kind of along those lines. Like, I would lower the voting age to 16, or I think that's a good number to start out with, because I think just taking away a voting age in general is going to scare a lot of people, because they're going to be like, oh, you're going to send your kids out to vote along those lines if they're really young. Yeah, so I think, like, initially starting the voting age being lowered to 16 is very beneficial.
Personally, I'd keep it at 18. I think 18 is a really good age because for me, I'm 18 now, and I know I didn't really start forming my own opinions until about 17. That there's a lot of growth that happens from when you're 16 years old to when you're 18, both physically and mentally. You become a very different person than who you were because you're starting to really perceive the world through matured eyes more so. I mean, a 16-year-old isn't necessarily a stupid person, as an adult might say. They can come up with their own opinions, but I think that there still is a lot of growth that still needs to happen before you can have truly your own opinions, because from my personal experience, I was an impressionable youth. I still am. And that, like, growing up with my parents, my dad a Republican, my mom a Democrat, like, that they directly influenced me, and I took some of the good and the bad from both, making me a libertarian. And that's definitely because of my parents. But I think at 18 is when I really came into my own and decided, was able to do that. And I think it's too early at 16.
I think that it's not really growing into maturity. I think that it's more of getting more information. I mean, if your only two sources of information is your mom and your dad, then obviously you're going to learn from them. But once you bring in the internet and you bring in lots of people, I think then you can make your own decisions. So I think that what we need is, we should lower the voting age, but we should also bring in education, bring in groups of people, like political discussion groups with older people and younger people. And we should just bring in all the information so that people can make informed decisions.
And along those lines, I think 16-year-olds should be able to vote for initially, because at 16 you're charged with the responsibility of driving. And driving is a significant responsibility, so why shouldn't you be able to have a say in what elected officials are doing, like with the roads and other types of appropriations for like public safety and such like that?
Yeah, I mean, if you can be affected by the law, you should be able to vote on the law.
Absolutely.
I think we may have another question.
Hi. Earlier you guys were talking about the overstepping of government bounds, and so I'm kind of wondering, what are your opinions on curfew? Because I would think that that's kind of an overstepping, the fact that you can't be outside for certain amounts of time.
I would definitely agree with that. Like us and the National Youth Rights Association has specific initiatives to try to combat on the local level curfew laws. To be able to design a initiative to keep people in their homes is obviously, like with the libertarian movement, it harms our liberty and autonomy, so we can't make decisions that we want, so we're just being kept into buildings and we're not able to have that freedom.
Yeah, the curfew, I don't even see how it's like reducing crime. I mean, all it's gonna do is move the crime into the daylight, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem logical to me. It's just stopping these people from committing crimes at night, but what if they commit crimes in the early morning or in the afternoon? I mean, crime doesn't just happen at night. Sure, there's a bunch of stereotypes that associate darkness with badness, but that's stereotypes, that's not the truth. In fact, lots of good things happen at night.
I think there are a lot of statistics that point to more crime happening at after dark, but I think the point of the curfew laws is not that like you're going to stop crime, but that you're going to have a reason to send someone home. And though I disagree with curfew laws, I can see their value in them, but I would still, I don't know, I'd consider getting rid of them.
All right. I, again, hate to be the little Nate that could end the political discussion, but I think we're running low on time. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, the panel, studio audience, the viewing audience. I'd just like to thank you for joining us today with Youth and Politics. So have a great night.